Hello everyone, today I will be presenting to you climate adaptation in media and welcome to AAC News. AAC News, for all those who don't know, it's all about climate news, and in this episode of AAC News I will be presenting you a breaking story with respect to a South Asian country, India, when we talk about climate justice and adaptation. Well, India's former principal advisor on power and energy and India's chief climate negotiator with respect to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Mr. Surya Prakash Sethi, in an interview says climate change adaptation should be India's priority, not mitigation. This news report has been recently published on 21st of September 2022 with his interview to outlookindia.com. So, I will be talking about what he was asked. Were India's climate negotiations in 2015 and 2021 improper? And Mr. Surya Prakash Sethi says that mitigation, however, is not only climate action that is required. Mitigation is one of the 5 climate actions required. A very major climate action is adaptation. People who have nothing to do with global warming are the ones who suffer the most, but everyone keeps talking about mitigation. So this is what Mr. Surya Prakash Sethi had to say about climate mitigation. Well, when he was asked, are you suggesting adaptation is of greater priority to India than mitigation? Mr. Sethi was very clear in saying that adaptation should be our only priority. Our emissions will not go down, it will rise. With 18% share of world's population, our emission is less than 7% of the global share. Our per capita consumption is the only 1/3 of the global average, and he slammed China. He said China's per capita consumption is 1.4 times that of global average. Our historical responsibility is negligible. This is where he says there are inequalities between global north and global south. He says that OECD countries should focus on mitigation while our aspirations will definitely go up in times to come. Our emissions will go up, their emissions will go down, and this is the way it should be. Now, when Mr. Sethi was asked what kind of adaptation, climate adaptation, does India need, and he says first of all skills. Yes, he says first of all India needs skill. If 60% of the population of India is dependent on agriculture, an agricultural primary sector dominated country, the agricultural outputs will suffer due to climate change, and they will require a new set of skills. The process of skill development does not happen on its own. The government needs to educate the people. India has been ranked 151 out of 160 countries in hunger index, and he talks about the malnutrition, he talks about the poverty, he talks about the lack of access of power, and he says that flood, landslides, and climate change, anthropological climate change induced events are increasing, and even the major metropolitan cities in India are flooding. Imagine the conditions when the cities floods, the people who live in slum, how will they suffer? And he says that the magnitude of these problems would rise with global warming. India should prioritize raising the adaptive capacity of its population vis-a-vis climate change. Now, moving ahead, he say, how does this media article use the term adaptation? Well, I would say that this media report says prioritization of climate adaptation holds the key for a country like India. Here, climate adaptation is being used in a very holistic and a comprehensive way to increase adaptive capacity of the population, which not only refers to adjustments in ecological, economic, and social systems, but also with respect to the expected climate stimuli. But it also refers to changes in the skill set, which relates to processes, practices, and structures to moderate the potential damages, or also it presents another side to benefit from the opportunities by adapting to climate change. So, moving ahead, what could be the other perspective of this article? I would say the perspective about indigenous people and their knowledge. India is the second largest country having the tribal population in the world. So indigenous people, their knowledge, their values, traditional ecological knowledge will shape the local climate adaptation to responses, which is missing in this article. These people are the first and the worst sufferers due to climate catastrophes, and their perspective also should be included. Now, in the end, I would like to ask a question to the class that India, we all know India is the second largest populated country in the world with only 2.4% of the land share. Along with 228 million people below poverty line, India continues to be having the biggest proportion of world's poor people. So what do you think? Without climate adaptation, will the number of poverty, poor people increase in India? And the second question is, does climate adaptation really mean anything to the poor? Thank you very much.